Hi, this is Martha, relationship counselor and clinical sexologist. And I am, as you can see, Chinese. So I am born and bred in Singapore. And I'm very, very happy to have my colleague in the US, Dr. Donna Oriowo. And she's a sex therapist, licensed social worker, and has a doctor in sexuality. And asking her to be part of this video series because not only is she a Black sex therapist, but actually also does a lot of work around unpacking um, how Black sexuality is important to talk about. And in the previous video, she introduced herself, and the second video talked about uh, um, the Black Lives Matters movement. And in this video, I want to ask her. So if you haven't watched the previous videos, please go back and watch it. In this video, I want to ask um, Dr. Donna, um, what can we do about the fact that this racism and discrimination continue to exist? What can each and every one of us do, especially for people who are not in the US?
Honestly, the amount of work that needs to be done can feel astounding. But the first way to solve any problem is actually to recognize that there is a problem, and to put yourself back in the problem. What I mean by that is stop seeing the problem as something that they are dealing with, that it's over there, and think of it through globalization. We are not just our own countries anymore. Our countries are, we're constantly trading back and forth, whether it's through the internet like we are doing, or whether or not you're visiting somewhere. What we consume on television, there's a globalization going on. And to separate yourself out and to say that, oh, that doesn't affect me because they are over there and I am over here, is the height of arrogance. So we need to humble ourselves and realize that we are all very much a part of the problem as well as we are a part of the solution. So being able to recognize for ourselves, okay, to note there is a problem. That's number one. Putting ourselves back in the problem, which means for me that you might look at what have your actions been? What are your values? And how do they align or not align with the current state of the world, right? So white supremacy is pervasive. It is not just in America, though people would like to believe that it is, right? I'm Nigerian American. So both my parents were born and raised in Nigeria. They immigrated to Belgium and then they immigrated here to the United States. I was born here. I am born here, but I am of Nigeria in some way, shape, or form, right? And there are some Nigerians that believe that, that's America, but it's not just America, it's everywhere. All of this stuff shows up everywhere. So recognizing how that, number one, that there is a problem, and then recognizing our space in the problem. So whether or not we are people who consistently perpetuate or people who are trying to break the cycle of abuse that happens, um, noting where we are and knowing that we are going to be both, that we're going to both be supporting white supremacist domination in some way, as well as we might be trying to break it in other ways. The point is that you want to be more over on the breaking side than you are on the perpetuating side. And then you want to figure out what can you personally do to decrease how often you are involved in the moving forward of white supremacy. So for some people, that looks like changing up what they purchase. For some people, it looks like making sure that they are centering the most marginalized voices in the work that they are doing. So most marginalized being the Blackest, the least heterosexual, the least, the disabled, all the whatever isms you have, making sure that the person that is usually at the bottom is centered. Because if and when their needs are met, the needs of everyone else will also be met. It A lot of us have heard about trickle down economics, whereby the rich people, if their needs are met, then they will trickle it down to everybody else, except that they don't. Because, like, can I just use really plain language here? They're hoarders. They are hoarding the wealth. They are hoarding the power. They do not want to share. They're not interested in sharing, which means that you have to flood the playing field. And by flooding the playing field, everybody gets what they need. So instead of making it rain, flood it, which means you start at the bottom. You make sure that their needs are overwhelmingly met, saturated, and let the waters rise, because the lifting tide raises all boats. So we're not going to let it rain. We're going to flood the field, which means that you have to be doing work every day that says, I'm going to flood the field today. How am I going to flood the field? How am I going to make sure that I am being more me, that I am more in alignment with my identity and less in alignment with white supremacy? Because let me tell you, pleasure is not difficult. It is actually harder for us to put ourselves in the consistent position to demoralize others. It takes energy, and it doesn't feel good. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance that has to happen. There's a lot going on in your brain and in your body, because your body is just like, yo, what are we doing? It is not pleasure filled. And if you were actually more pleasure minded, you wouldn't be doing all that. You would actually be doing work, doing things that serve you, that are about your identity, and that thus would bring pleasure to you and pleasure to those around you. Because your pleasure, if it only comes from hurting other people, then your pleasure is sadistic. And most of us don't think of ourselves as sadistic people. We don't want to think of ourselves as sadistic people, but we do have to keep in mind that the way that power moves, the way that white supremacy moves, it moves us into a space of seeking out sadistic pleasure. Except that it can't be that pleasure filled, because then you feel badly about yourself and what you're doing and have to further demoralize or dehumanize other people in order for you to feel okay. That's a lot of work. So if you want to do less work, you flood the field. You make sure that you are doing the work. It is not always going to be pleasure filled. It has long-reaching pleasure outcomes than it does pleasure outcomes in the moment. So it requires us to constantly be doing the work. And that work can look like following different people on Instagram, interacting with the posts, but doing your own work. It looks like reading. One great book to start with, and that is not necessarily US focused, is Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. I think that this book is a great starting point, because they're not just talking about white people. They're also talking about those who benefit from white supremacy. So if your skin color is white, chances are you benefit from white supremacy. If your natural hair texture is straight, chances are you benefit from white supremacy. So being able to do the work, to note where your power lies with what your physical body is doing, is also a part of the work. So thin people, or people who are smaller, this is also a function of white supremacy. So we have to be willing, ready, and able to do the work. We have to identify what work needs to be done, and we have to start with us. I think that oftentimes people want to go out and do work with other people, but I'm looking like, don't bother. Do the work with you. When you do the work with you, you change how you interact with people. You can change your family. I like to give this example where, like, I cut off my hair. I went natural for the first time when I was in undergrad. So somewhere between 2005 and 2009, probably like 2005, 2006, I went natural, which is to say I stopped straightening my hair using chemicals. I just let it grow out naturally. And then in 2009, I cut off all my hair, because I was like, I'm done. I'm done with doing straightening chemically. I'm done with straightening my hair thermally. So no more flat irons, no more nothing. No, I was just gonna let my hair grow the way that my hair grows out of my scalp. Do you know that also changed what my family did? Everyone in my family went natural and learned to appreciate and love their natural hair. And if I could do that, and I mean, they was against it. And I am the person in the family that's always like, oh, Black people this, Black people that, look at white supremacy and the thing that we're watching. I'm constantly the person pointing it out. Now my family, they're the people that are constantly pointing it out. This is what I mean. If you change you can change your family. Your family is going to go out, they're going to meet people, they're going to work in places, and they're going to change the culture there as well. They're going to meet like-minded people, they're going to team up, and they're going to try and change everything. And when we do that, when we make that part of our norm to do our work, we will change entire communities. We can change entire neighborhoods. We can change the entire world, but that means that we actually have to be committed to the work.
So the saying, let the change start from me.
Yep, let the change start
Okay,
from me.
so just to summarize the points that you just mentioned, the first one is to acknowledge that there is a problem, and to recognize the interconnection of all of us, that is not just a over there thing, and to start to do the work, not put the burden onto other people to learn. And so in the past year, because of actually COVID, I started to have more time away from my practice, and I actually did a few Coursera courses. So there are a few that I'm going to recommend in the description below. One that I'm actually right now taking is called anti-racism, I think. And another one is on the brutality of the police that I finished last year. And I also like what you said, which is to spend our money in the places that need the most funds. We support those people who are being marginalized and who actually need the support. And so to let our money do the talking. So when we change, then we can influence our family and our neighborhoods and our country. So I really agree with you. And this is precisely why I wanted to make this video, because I wanted to shine light on something that maybe a lot of people have chosen to forget, because it's been a few months, since George Floyd passed away. And people may have taken their eyes away from this issue. I think it's important that we keep talking about it and keep having conversations around why racism and discrimination is not right, and that each and every one of us can do something about it. So any other last words that you want to share for this video?
Last words for this video is don't grow complacent. It's very easy to do that. I think that for the last 4 years, people were almost blaming the state of the world on Donald Trump. And I think that that is a very cute and very erroneous and very dangerous assumption to make, because he was so out there with his racism. We forget about the casual racist. We forget about the people who dabble in it, as opposed to the people who have, who swim in it, as it were. So just because we have moved on, in the US with the new president, doesn't mean that racism is over. It means that we have that much more work to do. Just because we have Kamala Harris as vice president doesn't mean that there's not work to do. It means that there's a lot more work to do. So as long as we continue to push forward, we can certainly get there. At least that is my hope, that is my prayer, that we can get there. But it means that we can't lift our foot off the gas just because things appear to have changed. We need to continue to move forward aggressively.
Thank you so much for sharing. So this is the third video of 4. So tune in to the next one, where we're gonna shift our attention to sexuality.